I said this today. If you and your wife started discussing divorce, it's probably going to happen. The fact that people in Chicago now, and according to multiple sources around the NFL, there's talk about moving off Justin Fields. Well, it tells you it's not a slam dunk. And I've always believed you can spot awful and great very quickly. You know in one half that Justin Herbert's first start, he's it. First year, Joe Burrow before he's hurt, threw for over 400 yards in one game, 303 games. Lamar Jackson, first full year starting MVP. Mahomes, first year starting, full starting MVP. I think it was first year for Mahomes. Josh Allen, middle of second year. A lot of wow. You can spot awful, Zach Wilson, E.J. Emanuel early. You can spot great early. And I think Justin Fields is neither. I think he's going to be somewhere between the 12th best quarterback and the 22nd. Certainly good enough to start. But there's accuracy issues here. Also, the O-line ranks 14th. Daniel Jones' O-line ranks 30th. Daniel Jones has no tight end as good as Cole Kmet. Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool would both start for the New York Giants. So the O-line's better, the tight end's better, the receivers are as good. And though they don't have a Saquon Barkley, the Bears have two very serviceable backs. I think there's real consideration to move him. Do you think, if I said to you, 1, no way, 10, absolutely, where do you think the discussion meter is at in Chicago? They didn't draft him. This GM didn't draft him.
Right. I was just going to say that, right? As history tells us, if a head coach and a GM are in charge and they didn't draft this quarterback, if it's not their guy, you're on thin ice. Like you're looking for your guy, and they're absolutely going to do their due diligence on all of these quarterbacks, right? CJ Stroud included, Bryce Young, Levis. I mean, they'd be stupid not to do everything they can to see if any of these guys is a franchise quarterback. I tend to think though that the Bears are looking at their roster and they're seeing holes everywhere. It was a weak offense. It was a weak defense. They need everything that they can play their hand in a way to really sell the fact that they want a quarterback, whether they do or they don't, and trade down. Because you've got, 3 or 4 teams in the top 10 that need a quarterback, and everybody knows they need a quarterback, that you can have. You can get them basically fighting each other to the death for that first overall pick and get a bounty to rebuild your team. That just seems really enticing to me if I'm Ryan Poles, to know that, okay, do we know if Justin Fields is the guy? We don't know. As you just said, you can go either direction. You can look at him as, he's a 1,000-yard rusher. He's athletic. He had a big arm at Ohio State. Maybe we just have to put the weapons around him and he can make that Jalen Hurts kind of ascension here in year 3. Or maybe the accuracy is something he's never going to learn, but you at least give him a shot for a year, because I think that ability to sell the fact that you want a quarterback could lead to a ton of picks, because somebody's going to fall in love with Bryce Young out of that group. So somebody's going to really view him as the savior, and that could net you 3 or 4 starters for all we know.
Yeah, I mean, I think Houston, because they're at 2 and has holes to fill, will stay there and draft a quarterback. I could see the Colts, who I think draft 4 or 5, maybe it's 5. Yeah. I could see them saying, listen, our scouts think Bryce Young's special. We'll give you our first-round pick. We'll take yours. I don't think you'd have to give up a bounty. You'd probably have to give up a couple of seconds. I don't know what it would be, but I'm only moving up 4 spots. I think Bryce Young's the most talented. I think Richardson from Florida is the most tantalizing. I think Will Levis feels like there's a ceiling, but I like his talent, and I'm not sold on C.J. Stroud. I think he's as good as the team he inherits. I do think Bryce Young has special qualities. I think his ability to see the field is better than Justin Fields right now. I think he sees the field. I saw him play in high school. I watched 10, 15 games in college. I think Bryce Young's sort of accuracy, awareness, and ability to see the entire field, I think it's really unique. He's just tiny. So I can see, I don't think Houston would move up, because I could see the Colts on draft day making a move. I really could. They're not going to play their hand early, but I could see on draft day Chicago getting Because, by the way, if Chicago moves down to the 4th or 5th pick, they can still get a rush end, which they need.
Yeah. And as we know with these GMs, it's always an exercise of survival. So I get it. Like if you draft a quarterback, if you're Ryan Poles, the Chicago Bears, you're resetting the rookie contract, right? You have a quarterback on a rookie deal. Every team wants that, but you're on the clock as that GM. Now your fate is tied to this guy usually. Where if you go with Justin Fields for another year, maybe you trade down, you get all kinds of picks, you keep it. If it doesn't work out, if he falls flat on his face, then you got a shot the next year. You kind of buy yourself a little bit more time to say, well, that wasn't our guy, but we're still going to find our guy. And we have all this other stuff that's going really, really well. Look at Joe Douglas with the New York Jets. They've done a lot of other stuff well around the quarterback position, but they haven't figured out quarterback, but they're still there. So I think that he's good enough to where you can talk yourself into him being the guy and him having a future. I'd be surprised if the Bears took a quarterback. I think they're going to entertain offers, and if they had to stand pat, they take somebody else.
Yeah, Bryce Young's interesting. He's smaller. He's played in California and the South, so he's never played in cold, windy weather. And there's always been a feeling that in these Pittsburghs, Baltimore, Chicago's, now Minnesota obviously plays indoors, but Favre and Rodgers both had strong arms. There's always been a feeling up north, Flacco had a big arm. Burrow certainly got a good enough arm that it never made sense. Bryce Young may not make physical sense. Now, in Indy, in a dome, or Houston, he does. I wouldn't draft. There are just certain guys that are, like Teddy Bridgewater would never be a guy I draft as a northern team. Put him in New Orleans, put him in Miami. That sounds crazy, but certain guys don't have the big arm. Justin Fields does, but even Justin Fields remarked this week, I saw a quote. He's like, I hope we get a dome in Chicago. I mean, he's a Georgia kid. Yeah. He's like, I would love to play in a dome. Now, he played at Ohio State, obviously, but the NFL season's much longer. You play in Chicago. Those last 4 games at home, it's windy. It's rough. You're right on. You're not far from the lake. I've been around that stadium. I've jogged around it. I've been around it 10 times. So Bryce Young is not the physical athlete. I don't think he has quite the arm strength of Justin Fields. So for that reason, I could see them saying, we're going to give it one more year. All right, Ty Dunne, his newsletter, sign up, golongtd.com. We love having him on the show.